This episode of the School Zone podcast is brought to you by School Spirit Vending, hassle-free year-round fundraising for your school. At School Spirit Vending, we do all the work. You cash the check. Hey, School Zone podcast listeners. This is Matt coming at you from sunny Stephenville, Texas. Excited to have a guest on the show today by the name of Tim Wambach. Tim is out of Illinois. In fact, he graduated from Northeastern Illinois University and lives fairly close to where I grew up. So excited to have him on the show. He heads a group called Handicap This. So wanted to get him on to share what they do and the difference that they're making out there with schools. So Tim, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I wish I could say it was sunny Chicago, but unfortunately we're in November, so it's dreary over here.
I'd put up with that for a little while just to have a little, Chicago style pizza and, hang out on Michigan Avenue for a couple hours. So anyway.
Yeah, the pizza and the hot dogs and the skyline is absolutely, you can't take it back.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for being on. Why don't you take a minute, Tim, and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and that type of thing.
Sure. Well, like you said, my name's Tim Wambach, and I'm the lead actor and managing director of Handicap This Productions, and it's a self-titled company where we have a two-man stage show called Handicap This, and the two men in the show is myself and my partner in crime, Mike Berkson. Now, how this all really started was back in 2001. I met Mike in the summer of 2001. Mike was a 12-year-old boy at the time. I was a 27-year-old young man at the time, and I was Mike's one-on-one aide in school. The cerebral palsy that Mike has limits his use of his arms and his legs. When I met him, he was just a brilliant kid, brilliant guy. So through the years, Mike and I just developed a special relationship. We overcame a lot of obstacles, and we persevered through a lot of different things. We navigated, I guess you could say, the water of special needs. Mike was, actually he was like in honors classes and things of that nature. So we saw a lot of the injustices in the school system and just saw a lot of the ways that people interacted with Mike. And just through our relationship, we kind of started telling stories with what happened, and people started asking us to tell our story more. And the more people started asking us to tell our story, the more we realized that we were just awesome in front of a group. So we turned our message, our story, into a two-man stage show called Handicap This. And really now, we've been doing it since 2010. That's kind of how long we've been doing it, the show. So almost 6 years now. And really, I would say that the core message is inclusion and acceptance. That's the core message of the show. And it's really, we use Mike and I's relationship as kind of the thread that goes through the needle of the show. And we give a lot of different examples, and we do it in an entertaining and fun way.
So give us a little bit more background about how all that came up. There's a big transition between you being, working with him when he was a student in school to now years later, 14 years later, you guys are working together and doing live events together.
Right. So again, Mike inspired me to do more with what I have. That was really what he did for me. And when, I worked with him his 7th grade year, his 8th grade year, and his freshman year of high school. So I was with him for like 3 solid years. And really our relationship changed when I went to Washington, D.C. with Mike on a class trip, his 8th grade class trip. So that was like the first time that I actually saw what Mike's life was like in a full day. Like I knew what it was like from 8 to 3 in a school day, but I didn't know what it was like before 8, and I didn't know what it was like after 3. So when I was with Mike on this trip, I was his mom, I was his dad, I was his brother. I was his caregiver for that whole time. So I really understood much better what his life was like. There was a shift in our relationship after we did that trip. And my mind always works on how I can help other people. And Mike's always, at the forefront of my mind. So this one day, I was not working with Mike now. Mike was a sophomore in high school, and I was kind of doing all different kinds of things. April 1st, 2005, I went out for a run, and I had my MP3 player. This was before iPods, I believe, or at least before I had an iPod. It wasn't before iPods, but it was before I had an iPod. I just had this crappy MP3 player, and I'm running through my neighborhood, and Aerosmith's song "Sweet Emotion" came on, and or not "Sweet Emotion," "Dream On." It was "Dream On," and that just like catapulted me, and I started like getting all these visions in my head, and the vision that I got was that I would take Mike. Mike has a twin brother who's able-bodied as well, so I'd take Mike and his twin brother David, and we'd fly down to Orlando, Florida. And again, we're from Chicago. We'd fly down to Orlando, Florida, have as much fun as we possibly could in the weekend. And then Mike and David would fly back to Chicago, leaving me behind to run back. And that's what happened. In August 2005, I ran 717 miles between Orlando, Florida, and Chicago, Illinois. Really was to raise awareness how Mike lives, to raise awareness for cerebral palsy. But then it was also to show people it was possible, because I wasn't a runner before I chose to do that. Like I had ran around the neighborhood, but I had never run in a race, never a marathon, 10K, 5K, no K. So I decided to do that. And that was kind of really the domino that fell, that then people really started asking us to tell our story. And the more that happened, the more Mike and I realized that we had a bigger story to tell, and we could do it in a bigger and better way.
You call it a show. So what does that mean exactly? I mean, are you guys acting? Are you just purely sharing a story? I mean, how does all that kind of shake out?
No, that's a great question, because this is the kind of the thing. It's kind of funny. It's hard. We've always kind of figured it's hard to label it, because we call it a show, but we're not acting. We are very much sharing. We're telling stories, but we do it in a skeleton outline of where we're going. And Mike and I do a fair amount of improvising as well. Depends on the audience, depends on the age group. It seems the older the age group, the more improvising we do. The younger the age group, the less improvising we do. Just that's kind of how it happens usually. But we have a set, we have cues that, audio and visual cues. We have a technical director that runs the audio visual component of our show. And we have, different music in the show, and we play different videos in the show. So, I mean, it is a show, but it's the way that I would best describe it is it's educational, it's empowering, and it's entertaining. So we kind of hit you from all different kinds of angles. And Mike is absolutely hilarious. And I'm the straight man who's getting a little bit more funny as we go. So we just kind of play off of each other really well, and, share our experiences in a way that makes sense to the audience and really has a nice arc to it. And everyone leaves feeling inspired and wanting to do more with what they have.
Do you typically do your show in schools, or who's your ideal audience typically for, the show that you put on?
So we do a lot of different things. I mean, colleges typically tend to be our best audience, but really we do the show. Actually, yesterday we did a show at a local theater. It was for middle schoolers. So I think there was about 700 sixth graders at the show, but it was at a local theater where we did the show. So it was an amazing experience, because here we do a question and answer period after the show, and these 700 sixth graders stayed after the show to ask questions. I think they were there for about an hour afterwards, and they asked some of the most insightful questions. And I also then turned it around and I asked them, "What did you learn? Give me a phrase, give me a word, whatever." And then the kids were just raising their hand and shouting out everything you could possibly imagine, which was it was amazing. So we pretty much hit every audience, K through 12 and college and corporations. We kind of hit all those different audiences, and we just tailor the message for each group. So if it's like, we did a kindergarten group once, so that is a lot different than what we do on stage. So I would say the younger group is more of a speech, and then we get really more interactive with the younger groups. And we almost kind of look at it as a like show and tell, where we use Mike's wheelchair to kind of educate them on everything that it can do. And, using the metaphor that his wheelchair, those wheels are like your legs, and we put it in different perspectives so that the younger kids can grab it and understand it better. So we hit every audience in schools. Because of the travel, Mike and I, what we did was we created an online program for middle schools and high schools where they can access our show via the internet. And that's really what we're really excited about, where, right now it would take us to be in 5 schools, and pretty much that's a week or a lot of work in 3 days. We can be in 5 schools in one afternoon, and we don't even have to be there. So it's a pretty cool thing, and we're getting some great feedback from the online program. Really, the way we were kind of building this program is our message really promotes inclusion, it combats bullying, and it builds community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you said that you just did a show in front of about 700 middle schoolers. Is there an ideal audience size? What kind of venue do you guys need to put on the show? Sure. That type of thing for anybody who might be thinking, sure, man, this would be great for our school.
I love it. Honestly, this is the first thing I say. The show plays best in a theater. However, we've done the show in hotel conference rooms. We've done the show in corporations' cafeterias. We've done the show under a tent outside. So we can do the show pretty much anywhere, but it plays best in a theater. And then to answer the audience size question, my audience is always the bigger the better. Our biggest audience to date was 2,000 students, actually. I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with the Best Buddies program, but Mike and I performed for their leadership conference in 2013, and there were 2,000 people in the audience, and then there was also 2,000 people live on they streamed our show on their website also, so there were another 2,000 people live streaming. So that was a really cool event. But typically, I would say 200 people is probably the lowest you'd want to go, just because from a cost perspective and everything. 200 people is a good size audience, and then 200 and up, that would be my first thought. But we've done it in gymnasiums, in all different kinds of different venues. So if you are interested in in bringing Handicap This to your school, get on the phone with me and we can talk out options. A lot of what we would like to do is get a consortium of like 3 or 4 different schools where we could come. If we're going to travel, we want to hit multiple schools. Otherwise, if that's not an option, then again, like I said, our online program is affordable it should fit in any school budget.
Awesome. Tim, let's do this. Let's take a short break and then we'll be right back. Are you an educator, administrator, or school volunteer looking for a simpler way to raise money for your school? Let School Spirit Vending put their hassle-free year-round fundraising program to work for you. School Spirit Vending. We do all the work. You cash the check. Go to schoolspiritVending.com/school zone for all the details. All right, so we're back with Tim Wambach of Handicap This. Tim, where did you come up with the name Handicap This? I mean, talk about a catchy title. Me and Mike, a lot of times when we were together, things would just kind of come up. And I remember Mike was starting a MySpace profile. I'll never forget this. And we were typing in his unique username. And honestly, I don't remember exactly who came up with it. I think Mike did. He said, "How about Handicap This?" I'm like, "Sounds good to me." And then we put in Handicap This. And then the more I heard it, I'm like, that actually sounds pretty cool. And then we built a business around it. Because I like it from a perspective is it's kind of irreverent. At least that's kind of where we're kind of coming from. Like, most people aren't necessarily sure exactly what we're coming from when we're saying handicap this, but really it's like, you think I can't do something, well, handicap this. Like, you think I'm handicapped, well, handicap this. I'll show you what I can do, is really where it comes from and the spirit of what it is. So I got an email from you here several weeks ago, and it was outlining your guys' 4 big dreams. Talk to me about this, man. some pretty crazy stuff you guys have desire to do. Share a little bit with the audience what those dreams are, and are you any closer to any of them at this point in time?
Yeah, I think we're always working towards getting closer to all of them. What they are, or I guess the four big dreams. The first one is we want to perform on Broadway. We want to perform our show on Broadway in New York City, because we feel that performing our show on Broadway would just really be a big win for society. That's the first thing. The second thing, we want to have a movie made about our relationship on the big screen, on the silver screen. Third is we would like to host Saturday Night Live, and I would really think that the Broadway and the Saturday Night Live could really be a tandem goal. We could knock off both of them at one trip down to New York. So, if Lorne Michaels, if you're listening, Mike and I would love to host Saturday Night Live. And then our last one is really just we want to get our online program in as many schools across the country as possible. Because, for instance, yesterday, we were in front of 700 middle school kids, and these kids were impacted so positively. We had this huge standing ovation afterwards, but it was more so the Q&A and the education that happened after the show and what they learned from the show that was just such a powerful thing. One of the words that we kept hearing were inclusion, acceptance, don't judge. Once someone said, it's not the looks of the person, it's what's in his soul. That's what a sixth grader said. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's awesome. And then another kid, and this, I almost cried. He's like, not all heroes wear capes. And that was just a cool thing. And other people were coming up to me afterwards and saying, I've never seen these kids so attentive. They were hanging on every word you guys had to say. And that's what, I guess that's the power of our message, because Mike and I have done it for so long. We're really good at entertaining an audience, but also impacting an audience.
So how do you guys walk the line between, the whole politically correct thing,
right,
and having real impact? Because oftentimes I feel like, in so many cases, people are just kowtowing to that political correctness.
Yep.
So how do you guys walk that line and make it real? Because, it obviously is real, but
right.
I guess without sounding preachy, I guess, for lack of a better term.
And that's, I think that's a good point you make about preachy. I think a lot of times people, if we're doing a public show and people are buying tickets to see us, they think we're going to be preachy, and we're not. We're not at all. We push the envelope, and we definitely are not politically correct. Now, here's the caveat with that. Depending on the audience will depend on how far we push that envelope. For instance, when you asked about the audiences, and colleges were my first answer to that. Colleges, depending on the type of university, and if it's a really conservative university or whatnot, we might not push the envelope as far as we can. But usually we pretty much say whatever we want, and not in a bad way, but those are the audiences that there are no rules pretty much with the college audience. Then with the high school audience, we pull back a little bit, and then with the middle school audience, we pull back a little bit. But really, we're honest and we're real. It's raw. The information that we're giving and the stories that we're sharing are raw, and they're not filtered in the sense that we talk about, just for a quick example, Mike talks about his battle with depression, and we're open and honest about that, and he talks about that with young audiences. Yesterday, he talked about that with the sixth graders. So we try not to pull back any punches, and that, because I think that's the thing is when you're sharing your own story, you have a lot of a leeway in the sense of things will happen to us that we can insert. So, for instance, there's one story. I won't go into the whole thing here, but we have this funny story that happened on the road in Kansas City. It's a little bit more of a adult humor, so we didn't use that yesterday, but we would use that for an adult audience. So it's just we kind of pick and choose. Pretty much a week before we're to do a presentation, Mike and I will sit down and we know exactly who's going to be in the audience. So then we say, all right, we can do this, we can't do that, we can do this. So it's really just kind of knowing how far you can push it, but we definitely push the envelope as much as we possibly can.
So any other big things that you'd like to share with our audience, Tim, or takeaways that you'd want to leave them with so that when they're trying to figure out maybe that next program or that next presentation that they have done, that they remember Handicap this versus something else?
Really, we're talking to more and more schools that pretty much everywhere budgets are being cut and there's just not enough money. You hear that all the time, and I think you can look at the budget all you want, and you can look at it as a way to keep you out or as a way to get you in. And I always look at it as bringing our program in, whether it's us live or whether it's our online program, it's an investment in your kids, like in your students. That's what it is. It's an investment in your students. So let's take it for example for our online program. What schools can do with their online program is they have access to it for an entire school year. So if they were to buy it tomorrow, they'd have it until the end of June of 2016. So there are so many different opportunities. They could use that product as a way to fundraise for their school. They could have a community event and charge $5 a head and have this big community event. And now your whole community is going to get impacted by our message. And you're going to potentially make money or at least pay for what the program costs. And you could actually do that multiple times. So my advice, if they wanted to bring the program in, is you play it for the parent-teacher conference or something like that, and then you get them all excited about it, and then you have a big event 2 weeks later, and you have them all invite their friends and family. You're going to make money on it. So if we let obstacles hold us back, what kind of example does that set for our students, right? That's the way I look at it, because with Mike, here he is, someone that he uses a wheelchair. He virtually has zero movement of his arms and his legs, and he pushes through every single day. And he's someone that has taught me so much about life. That's kind of how I say it. I look at it as it's an investment in the students. And really what we've noticed with our show is there's just like a positive ripple that happens after people see the show. And we've got these great stories that come back to us. Real quick story I want to leave you with, and because I think this is a really positive message. We did a show in Kentucky a couple of years ago at the River Park Center, this gorgeous theater, and 1,000 high school and middle school kids in the audience for the show. And prior to the show, there were these high school students who were bullying these special needs students. And then the lights went down, the show started, they stopped. But after the show was over, those high school bullies, they apologized to all of the special needs students, and they apologized to the teachers. So that was like an immediate impact right away of how powerful the message can impact impact students. So I'm passionate about our message because I see what the impact has done firsthand, and I see people walk away from the show literally with their mouth agape, like going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just saw what I saw." And I just want more people to experience that.
Very, very cool. Well, Tim, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share with our audience. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, handicapthis.com is our website. We have a Facebook fan page. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. We're on all the good stuff. We also have our own podcast where Mike and I, we do some interviews, and Mike and I take a topic and we'll talk about it as well. So we're on iTunes, and if you type in Handicap This, you're going to find a whole slew of stuff from us.
Very cool. Well, folks, check out Tim and Mike and what they're doing at handicapthis.com. Tim, appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day to be on the School Zone podcast, and God bless you, man.
I really appreciate it, Matt. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and for everyone listening today, keep supporting the School Zone podcast. Obviously, Matt is someone who's passionate about helping students as well, so continue to support him.
Thanks, Tim. This episode of the School Zone podcast is brought to you by School Spirit Vending, hassle-free year-round fundraising for your school. At School Spirit Vending, we do all the work. You cash the check.